Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Uh-oh!
Right. Well, we didn't see that last one gesture, but everybody could imagine, I believe, if they have watched the previous episodes. Good morning. And this is
Morning.
Japanese Politics One-on-One, episode 223, where we are going to talk about Japan's political shakeup and what's happening really in this country right now. Before the elections, actually, we're not too close to the upper house elections yet, but we're getting close. And there are a lot of other developments happening because of those elections, and not only. So, Timothy, good morning.
Good morning, Maya. I am reporting today once again from the deck of the good ship Grimm's in Katsuyama Port. That's very close to Hota. It's between where the Aqua Line comes to the Chiba Peninsula and the tip of the Chiba Peninsula, and that's where I'm reporting from. Gosh, it seems like for these last couple of months, doesn't it?
Right, yes. So every single Sunday morning, 8:20, maybe 8:19, if I can have a jab.
Yes, I apologize. I was a little bit tied up today this
Right,
morning.
okay. Well,
Just getting my hair right just took hours.
yes, and all the blush and well,
Yes.
eyeshadow and everything. Yes, I can imagine that. Okay, wonderful. So, well, before we say a word of thank you to our sponsors, please let us know, what are you going to tell us about today?
Okay, first of all, I'd just like to thank our audience, the tremendous numbers of our audience. The numbers are increasing. Not everybody is familiar, Maya, with the synopsis that we produce and we publish every week, maybe 3 or 4 days after we do the briefing, so that if you can't watch the briefing live, too bad for you, or catch it on YouTube, maybe you can catch the synopsis. It doesn't have all the color, the humor, the good looks, and it doesn't include the answers to the many questions that are asked at the end of the briefing. So it is our attempt to kind of keep you up to date, even if you can't attend. So I hear from so many people. We're getting notifications of people who are just discovering us and tuning in. So we very much appreciate that. And with that, let me get on with the outline of today's news. There's a lot of wind coming up, but I don't think it's being caught on the microphone, I hope, Maya.
No, not yet. Hopefully, not from now on either.
You'll see the boat rocking back and forth. It's pretty significant.
Right.
So, Maya, the yen closed at 145.6 this Friday. It is kind of balancing in a range. It is strengthening a little bit. I'd like to get into the hows and whys and what the prognosis is and what it means when the yen closes at a certain number and why we watch it so carefully. The Prime Minister is in town all this week. He had a couple of visits last week, not quite state visits. The last state visit was from the President of Brazil in March. Nothing huge that's going to keep him otherwise preoccupied, but he's got a lot of other things that are going on that I'd like to talk about too. Let me see. The key parliamentary issues on the slate for this diet session. This diet session ends on June 22nd. It is the same day as the election for the Tokyo Metropolitan Government. So there's a lot going on there, and there's a lot related to that. So an economic stimulus package, the pension reform legislation, which just passed on Friday. You might remember we were talking about Konotaro holding back and not wanting to vote on it. It needed a unanimous vote. It seemed to have passed on Tuesday. We were waiting for that to have a little bit of a fireworks, but it passed, and then on Friday the LDP accepted it to move forward. We've got trade negotiations with the USA. Mr. Akazawa, the Economic Revitalization Minister, will be leaving on the 22nd in this coming week for 2 days as usual, and then come back and report to the Prime Minister and to the Cabinet. Cybersecurity legislation has now been approved for submission into the Parliament, and there's a new legislation that's being considered for anti-espionage. People who dabble in Japan, maybe they don't know very well, But Japan is globally known as a playground for spies. They don't have an anti-espionage legislation. And so a lot of countries, through diplomats or through major corporations or a lot of different things, they send their agents of influence to Japan because it's a relatively easy way. There's not a lot of military access, military secret information they get, but there's plenty of economic and technical information that can be vacuumed up, and a lot of people, a lot of countries are doing that, and this is the LDP's attempt to kind of deal with that. And like I said, the Tokyo Metropolitan elections begin on June 13th, and they end on June 22nd during a very critical time. I want to get into that. And then there are other legislative issues that I'd like to get into later in the briefing, but let me turn it over to you so that you can say thank you to our fabulous sponsor.
Thank you very much for this, Timothy. And yes, if you have watched us before, you already know that our first sponsor is Kanchu. They are also known online as Kanchu.com. You can connect with them online, of course, by going to their website, which is www.kanchu.com. But you can also talk with James Howell. You can see his email here, james@kanchu.com. He is also very popular. I can say that, yes. But
he is
very
popular.
active.
He's a good writer, and he's very active on social media.
Yes, very active, especially on LinkedIn, where you can see some of their works with pictures, beautiful photos of the work they do. So Kanchu is based in Yokohama, and they do buying and selling real estate in Yokohama, of course, and they do real estate investment plus property management. Do not hesitate to talk with them. You can talk with them either in Japanese or in English. There is no language barrier there. So thank you very much to Kanchu and to James Howell. And now over to you again, Timothy.
Thank you very much, Maya. I'd like to get right to the point of the yen-dollar exchange rate. It closed once again at 145.6. Last week at this time, we reported that it closed at 145.3. So just a very slight strengthening of the yen. It kind of, like I said, it's a barometer, it's a thermometer read of what's going on in the economy and politics, geopolitically. It tells you that things are happening in a positive way, in a negative way. This is good for exporters, the yen staying there at a very stable rate, and the government exuding confidence in the currency. They don't have all of the keys to that. They can't control it all. But the appreciation of the yen since the beginning of 2025 has been up, let me see, 6%, which is a pretty good rate. The reason for the strengthening of the yen, not the weakening, as you might expect, is because the differential between the value of the dollar and the value of the yen, that difference is growing, but it seems to have stopped a little bit. And the economic predictions for the United States are that the dollar is going to fall a little bit, or the Fed might come in to tweak interest rates. And so that puts a little bit more of a emphasis on the yen. So the differential begins to decrease, and then the yen and other currencies become a little bit more of a safe haven for investors and for exporters. The other thing that influences the yen over this last week is the position of the Bank of Japan on monetary policy. They seem to have been taking, the Bank of Japan governor, Mr. Ueda, seems to have taken a bit of a dovish stance on that. They have remained their interest rate at 0.05%. They haven't moved on that. There's not going to be a Bank of Japan meeting until the end of the month, as usual, the last week of the month, a 2-day meeting that we all look forward to. But the forecast for growth in Japan has been cut. It was projected to be about 1.1%. The Bank of Japan has cut that down to 0.5%. So growth was expected to be 1.1%, a little bit of a gain over the last quarter. It doesn't seem like it has happened. They have cut that rate to 0.5%. So the economic indicators are not looking great for Japan. The consumption is down. They decreased the GDP for Q1 by about what was it? Maybe 5%. The trajectory was supposed to carry us over. Consumption has been down. There's been a lot of increase in prices. The inflation has, as a consequence, has gone up too. And then we were hit with the Trump tariffs in March. So that has had an impact too. Let me see. The trade balance and economic performance has shown signs of improvement. Plus, the concern for the U.S. economy and the trajectory have led to a reassessment of the dollar's strength. The current strength of the yen is favorable for importers as their purchasing power increases, and for exporters, the yen's strength impacts their competitiveness to sell their product overseas, and it impacts pricing of products. So usually you're pricing your products for sale into the market months in advance, but you have to depend on the price that you have now, what the indicators are. So that means that many of these analysts are watching the show and contributing to the dialogue, just like you smart people are. So once again, moving on to the Prime Minister. He's in town this week, no state visits. Last week was pretty busy, no state visits. As I said, the last state visit was with Brazil, President Lula in March. But this last week, he had a courtesy call from His Royal Highness Al-Hussein bin Abdullah II, who is the Crown Prince of Jordan. It wasn't a state visit, it was a courtesy call. He was also visited by President Gabriel Boric of Chile, who was here for their expo. I think it was a Chile National Day, the day that Chile is identified as the main sponsor. So he came to attend that. And also in kind of anticipation of the 130th year anniversary of diplomatic relations between Chile and Japan. Can you believe that? That occurs in 2 years in 2027, but there's a lot going on between Chile and Japan. On the 12th, the following day, he had a summit with the President of the Republic of Guinea-Bissau, His Excellency General Umaro Cicero Embalo. And the following the following day, he was visited by the Director General of the U.S. Trade Organization, who was visiting Japan for the very first time. The World Trade Organization is at a critical juncture now. Japan plays a central role in U.S. global trade in this region as well. So this visit was rather significant as well, and took up a lot of energy from the Prime Minister's residence. Looking forward, the President of Austria, His Excellency Dr. Alexander de Beer Bellen, will visit this next week to visit the expo. It is not a state visit. He'll be here from the 21st until the 25th, a 4-day visit. And then late in June, the Emperor and the Empress will visit the UK. This is the first overseas visit, state visit by the Emperor since their enthronement, strangely enough. That's been quite a while. Mr. Ishiba is scheduled to attend. Pay attention to this, because this schedule, this sequence of events has a big impact on the upper house election, on the potential visit of the Prime Minister to Washington, D.C. to perhaps ink a deal on tariffs with President Trump. But in terms of hierarchy, in June of this year, the G7 will be in Canada, in Alberta. This will be the first G7 that Ishiba has attended as Prime Minister, so it's somewhat important. They've also got the East Asia Summit, APEC, the APEC Summit, G20 Summit, and the NATO Summit on June 24th to 26th in The Hague. The one in June, the NATO Summit, is very close to the end of the 90-day tariff pause, as you might recall. And it allows the opportunity for the Prime Minister to visit Trump during that time. So he will attend this visit in The Hague, but I think the timing is a little bit off. I think probably if he's going to visit the United States, he has said he would to ink this deal, and I think the President of the United States is looking forward to that, to sign the deal, to make an announcement, to make a lot of fanfare out of that. But that timing doesn't happen until maybe June 9th or so. I'm sorry, July 9th. So the American Independence Day is July 4th. July 9th would be the time that the Prime Minister goes to visit there. That's very close to the elections in not just Tokyo, but also for the upper house elections. The G7 will be on June 15th through 17th. The Diet closes on June 22nd. The Tokyo elections are on June 22nd. That is election day. The upper house elections are on July 13th or 20th. It's not decided yet. It could be as late as the 27th. It needs to fall on a Sunday. It must be in July. So it could be any one of those 3 weekends, July 13th, July 20th, or July 27th. This is right around the time that the 90-day tariff pause ends. And so the prime time for the Prime Minister to visit the United States to ink a deal is right around July 9th, very close to the Independence Day, a lot of celebration in the United States. But it's also a bit of a cramped schedule because the Tokyo metropolitan elections will be on from June 13th to the 22nd. That will indicate where the population stands with regard to Ishin, to Constitutional Democratic Party, to LDP, to Komeito. It'll be a barometer for that. And so we're very much looking forward to that. The president has also been formally invited to attend the expo on July 19th. This is a huge, what a packed schedule this is. On July 9th, if this works out according to plan, the Prime Minister will visit Washington, D.C. on July 19th. The president has been invited to visit Osaka and the expo there because July 19th is the day that it's America's turn to be the kind of flashboard for the expo. So it's the American day. We've got the Chile day that was last week, and that's why the president visited Japan. So it's a big deal for the national, for a country to have their kind of showcase at the expo. It's a big deal. I don't know if the president will actually come. If he comes, that's a huge feather in the cap. And can you imagine? He comes on the 19th of July, and some day after that is the election for the upper house. So in this sequence, in this tumbling sequence, you can imagine that Mr. Ishiba's profile is being burnished and polished and in the press. So it is a schedule of events that could be used to the Prime Minister's advantage, and I imagine it will be strategically used. There are key parliamentary issues that are being considered this last week and tumbling into this new week. The economic stimulus package and budgetary measures, trade negotiations with the United States, cybersecurity legislation, and healthcare and AI integration issues are on the board and being hotly debated. With regard to the economic stimulus package, the LDP has decided they're not going to cut the consumption tax. They've paid too high a price for bringing the consumption tax from 6% to 8% to 10%, and they can't swallow cutting it. The Constitutional Democratic Party wants it cut for a year. The Democratic Party for the People wants consumption tax cut for 5% across the board moving forward. The Constitutional Democratic Party, Mr. Noda, proposes just food, just bring it down to zero, just give it a year. And actually, both of these, all three of the parties, and Komeito too, they're in the process of writing their manifesto that will be the songbook for all of the candidates for election, to not just to national for the upper house election, but also for the Tokyo metropolitan election as well. So it's a hot issue. Do they give money away? Do they send, nimayen or 20,000 yen to displaced families or families that are living under a certain level? You might call it a poverty level. Do they cut gasoline taxes, that sort of thing? But the major decision that was made, it was made on Friday, was that the LDP and Komeito have decided, it's a fight between Komeito and the LDP. Komeito wants to provide this relief. The LDP said we can't fiscally be responsible and cut the consumption tax. So we'll keep the consumption tax, but as a bow to the Komeito to keep them happy and to keep them mollified, they've said on a case-by-case basis on different policy issues, depending on the subset of the population, then we will accommodate through subsidies or maybe outright cash distributions. And as I said, Mr. Akazawa and his team will depart this week for 2 days in Washington, D.C. to continue the discussions. This will be number 3. The first one kind of didn't count. The first one was maybe 4 weeks ago. President Trump showed up at the meeting somewhat unannounced. It was unexpected. He spent about an hour with Mr. Akazawa and his team. Mr. Akazawa had a picture with Make America Great Again, a red baseball cap. Caught a little bit of flack for it, but I thought it was a nice gesture. He met with his team, the cabinet secretary, the commerce secretary, the trade secretary, USTR secretary. But they only met for like 90 minutes in the first round. The second round was a little bit more fruitful, a little bit more progress. This third round, and I think we're beginning to see what the strategy might be for Mr. Ishiba. It is not trying to cut in and get a deal and ride on the coattails of what happened just recently with the UK and with China. It's a more methodical, go slow approach, more thoughtful, and I think it's building purposely to a crescendo, as I mentioned to you earlier about the Prime Minister going to Washington, D.C., signing a deal, making a lot of fanfare out of that on July 9th, and then coming home and then wrapping up the campaign for the upper house election. That sounds like a smooth scenario to me. So let's keep an eye on it and follow that up. The Tokyo Metropolitan Government elections are keen in understanding where the population and where the voters are going in the upper house election. You might remember that we've been talking about the possibility of a double election. That possibility, the time of that possibility happening for there to be a double election is eclipsing very quickly. If there's not a move made on a no confidence motion, then we're just going to have the upper house election. Half of the members of the upper house will go up for election about 4 weeks after the Tokyo metropolitan election. So what happens in the Tokyo metropolitan election will have an impact on the national election. But with regard to a double election or a no confidence motion, it doesn't look like it's going. You might recall that we said Kono Taro was going to dig his heels in and he wasn't going to accept this pension reform legislation that impacts negatively his base. His base are small and medium companies. The proposal that was accepted by the LDP and passed by this council that he sits on Tuesday, and then it was they made a decision there to push it forward, was to include more people into this pension reform legislation so that people that are not full-timers, they work 20 hours a week, the employer must pay part of their pension allowance. They contribute to it too. So even if they're a part-timer, and that's not the case now. The case now is if you're a seishain, you must pay into it. The company must pay into it. And then after you retire, you get the benefit of that. And that net is being expanded. So although Kono Taro made his position known, he didn't stop the proposal from going to the cabinet for a think about it, and then the cabinet decided let's push it to legislation. So now it goes into the cabinet for deliberations. But that process within the LDP, within Komeito, has finished on Friday, and now that legislation will be considered. You'll hear a lot about it over the next couple of days. It will be passed. If it's not passed, then Mr. Noda said there's a no confidence motion. So more likely than not, it will be a knockdown fight over the next 2 or 3 weeks because the legislation needs to be considered within a certain specific period of time. And then there's a vote. There's a vote up or a vote down. And if it's not made, then we move on. So there's some time pressure there. But with regard to the Tokyo metropolitan election, let me just give you a little bit of an insight there into what's going to happen on June 13th. June 13th, the Tokyo metropolitan government closes down, the governor closes it down, and all 120 seats within the 42 districts of Tokyo, the Tokyo-to, the Tokyo metropolitan, go up for election. So they have an election period of 11 days. It starts on the 13th and it ends on the 22nd. So that is actually the same day that the Diet closes down. So there's a lot of political happening. What happens in the Tokyo elections, it's just the Diet will close down. So it's an inescapable marketing or news item that the entire population is going to be watching. So the upper house election, it is not decided when that election will occur. We haven't been told, but it needs to happen in July and it has to happen on a Sunday. So there are only a couple of times for that to occur. But the 127 seats of the Tokyo metropolitan government is basically controlled by LDP, Tomin First, Komeito. So let me give you the rundown there so that you can keep that in mind. And then as we approach the Tokyo election results, we can compare what happened and who is on top. So between Tomin First, which is the political party that was started by Ms. Koike, the governor, that has 31 seats. 31 of 127 seats are held by Tomin First. The LDP is in second place. It holds 30 seats. Komeito holds 23 seats. So among those three parties, and they're either LDP or LDP light, Tomin First, LDP, Komeito, they hold 84 seats. So that's a majority. So all legislation that goes through the Tokyo metropolitan government is dominated by this coalition. So they're not as fractured as they are in the national house, in the upper house, and particularly in the lower house. But they do have a lot of distribution of political power there. Coming right after Komeito is the Japan Communist Party, strangely enough. So you've got Tomin First, LDP, Komeito, and in fourth place, you've got the Japan Communist Party, which has 19 seats. The Constitutional Democratic Party, Mr. Noda's party, has 16 seats. Ishin has 1 seat. Tokyo Seisaku Network has 1 seat, and Independence holds 6 seats. There's a lot going on in this election. You might remember the election for governor was really, there were like 50 candidates for governor, and with the billboards, there was a lot going on there. And there was also, you might remember the emergence of Shinji Ishimaru, who came up. He's a governor, or he was a mayor in a city towards Hiroshima. He ran for governor and came in as the second winning candidate out of kind of nowhere. So he's coming in. His political party, he's established that. It is Seisai no Michi, which is a new political party. He has attracted more than 1,000 applicants, and he will submit a field of 60 candidates for this election, this campaign for Tokyo. And so there's a lot of anticipation and maybe nervousness going on back there. I've got a lot of action going on behind me too. With regard to where Tokyo stands in relation to the rest of the nation, to give you a bit of sense of how Japan is really swayed and dominated by what happens in Tokyo. As everybody knows, the seat of government is in Tokyo. All of the ministries are here. It's just a huge concentration. The economy of Tokyo exceeds the economy of several of the surrounding nations in the Asia Pacific. The Tokyo population is about 37 million. The population of Japan is 124 million. So that's about 30% of the population lives in the Tokyo metropolitan area. That's huge. Secondly, in terms of GDP, Tokyo alone produces about 1.07 trillion dollars of GDP, whereas the national government, the entire country of Japan, produces about 4 trillion in GDP. So that means, once again, that Tokyo produces about 30% of Japan's overall GDP. So what happens in Tokyo is a bellwether for everything else that happens. So if you have the Tokyo metropolitan election in early June, and then the national elections in July, definitely if there's a sneeze or a cough, it will be reflected in some sort of malady with regard to the LDP in July. So there's a lot to look forward to. So let's keep an eye on that. Let me see what else we've got. I know I want to wrap this up, Maya. Other legislative issues, the economic stimulus and budget development. The LDP and Komeito have agreed on an extra budget in the autumn. This is a significant development. Rather than consumption tax, they've agreed, let's give the population some money, but we can't do it until autumn. So let's do what we can on a piecemeal basis with the gasoline tax, or maybe a little bit of money to affect the rice prices, or to keep inflation down. But let's form a budget to be passed in August. And you might remember, before this budget was passed in April, I think April 3rd it was eventually passed, a little bit late. It should have been passed on the last day of March. But you might remember that before it was passed, the leader of the LDP, Mr. Ishiba, and the leader of Komeito had a lunch meeting, and in that over that lunch, the prime minister says, yes, well, I'm thinking about a stimulus package that needs to be put together. This was before the budget was even passed. The Komeito leader mentioned this in passing to the reporters who were standing outside, and the prime minister got lambasted for that, because he was talking about an advanced budgetary requirement when the current budget hadn't even been passed and hadn't considered such a scenario. So in fact, it turns out that is going to be the case. So politics is always interesting and has lots of twists and turns. Let me see. We did mention about the anti-espionage proposal submitted by the LDP Policy Council. That Policy Council is led by Sanae Takaichi. She was a candidate for president of the LDP twice. She is still, in her mind, a candidate for prime minister. She is on the far right end of the political spectrum within the LDP. She's got quite a following. There was a group actually set up this last week, a group that has been in existence for several years. It was resurrected this week with Taro Aso, Sanae Takaichi, Kobayashi Takayuki, and a couple of the people who are really kind of gearing up for a potential challenge to the prime minister. If the LDP wins or doesn't lose too bad in the upper house election, there is an opportunity for the prime minister to resign, or to be asked to resign. Less so being fired. Right now, the prime minister, by all measures, is not doing a terrible job. Some people don't like how he does it and what he's doing, but he's not doing a hugely terrible job. He could hang on a little bit longer, but I think they'll use I don't think there'll be a no confidence motion submitted over the next 2 weeks, and that's the deadline. It needs to happen before June 6th or so. Otherwise, the schedule doesn't match. You're not going to be able to have a double election. And then, whatever the results of that double election are, you attack the prime minister for generating whatever result it was. But ultimately, Mr. Ishiba will probably not last the rest of his legitimate term of office. And I think the indications that there is a significant group being built within the LDP to challenge him, or at least coalesce these forces, is pretty significant. And Taro Aso is not somebody you can discount as. He's not likely to run for prime minister. I think he's too old. He's not interested in doing that. He's more interested in being behind the scenes. But Sanai Takaichi has definitely got her eyes on that. Takayuki Kobayashi as well. And so there's a bit of a group. I think the group attracted about 50 plus members into this. It's not an inaugural meeting. It's the restart of a formerly existing meeting. So we'll take a look at that. Let me see. I'm getting towards the end of my briefing. Taro Aso is in Rome today attending the inaugural Mass of Pope Leo the 14th. This is the first Mass of the new Pope, and many people don't know that Taro Aso is a Catholic. He's a Roman Catholic. He's a practicing Catholic. And if you know his family's background and the cement company and the wartime history of his family, you might find that somewhat odd. But he is a sterling individual. He is, formerly prime minister, the longest serving finance minister. He is an Olympic, I'm not sure if he's a medalist, but he was an Olympic athlete in his younger days as a marksman. So he's not somebody you can shake a stick at and not be threatened by later. I think that is it for me, Maya. I'd like to open it up for Q&A and respond to any issues where I might not have hit them, or I hit them on the wrong angle, or maybe there are other people in the audience that have better insight to some of the issues that have come up. So back to you.
Okay, thank you, Timothy, and otsukare-sama desu for the moment, because we continue. But before that, I want to have a word for our sponsors, of course, and also invite everybody who is watching us on YouTube or LinkedIn. If you haven't subscribed or followed us there, just let us know that you're there and hit like or hit subscribe. So when you do that, of course, you'll also be receiving notifications for the podcasts, the broadcast as well, and it will make it easier for you to find these briefings. And of course, before we go into the Q&A session, I want to say thank you to our other sponsor, and that is Houze Inc. They're known also by this name. They are available online and also via their webmaster at houze.co.jp. Email address. They are based in Yokohama as well, and they do custom home design and construction, and also commercial building construction. They have beautiful houses built for private individuals, like private houses. They also do a lot of other customization work. So if you want to talk with them in more detail, please reach out. You can talk with them again, either in English or in Japanese, so do not hesitate to do that. And Timothy, so now we're going to the Q&A session. We've got quite a few questions again. I'll start with, first of all, I wanted also to say thank you to everybody who is watching us from other parts of Japan and other parts of the world. We've got somebody watching us from Oita Prefecture, or Oita City, and also from Colorado and from Chiba. So thanks very much for all of you doing that, from the United States, other parts in the United States as well. Okay, and well, let me start with the questions then. So
okay, Maya, before you get started, I can see in the distance a storm cloud heading my way. I might need to scramble and go down below and continue this, but I'm watching it carefully. That's why I turned my camera off. So,
okay, hopefully it will stop for a while and let us finish the briefing. If not, then okay, we'll see what happens. All right. So, okay. So first we've got a question from Gregory, who is on YouTube right now, and he says, "Do you see a rift between the Osaka Ishin and the National Ishin?"
Good observation, Greg. Nice to see you. Yes. So Ishin is a little bit different from other parties. The leader of Ishin is the governor of Osaka. It wasn't like that. The leader was Mr. Baba, who was a member of parliament, a lower house member. And since Ishin didn't do so sterlingly in the October elections, the leader of the Ishin no Kai decided to change the leadership. So Mr. Maehara is now manning the diet session, but the governor is also the head. So it's a little bit fractious, and the decision to do that could indicate that we're going to back up a little bit. Let's focus again on Osaka, on the Kansai region, before we start moving more aggressively into the national sphere. Maybe we've gone a little bit too quick. It could be something like that. But Ishin holds one seat in the Tokyo metropolitan government. That's not very much, but that's not, I mean, their base is Kansai. But I do suspect that there is a rift between the Kansai Ishin no Kai and the Tokyo Ishin no Kai. I can get into that later, but I'm not quite prepared to respond to that in any depth, Greg. Maybe you are. You spend a lot of time down there.
Right. Okay, Greg, if you can help us with this, please do. We can get, or we are grateful for any help we can get. And moving down, well, now on LinkedIn, before I move to Clubhouse, on LinkedIn, we've got Manabe-san, and his question is, the opposition parties are loudly talking about measures to help the employment ice age generation. But is this just lip service to gain votes? In fact, where is the critical point in this issue? What do you think? And before you answer, Timothy, just for clarification for people who are watching now, so the employment ice age is the age of those who started work between 1993 and 2004. In that decade, just after the burst of the bubble economy. So there were a lot of structural changes back then, or maybe not really that deep, but many people had difficulty finding permanent employment. And since then, they have remained in temporary employment, which in Japan actually almost leaves them out of the system.
Yep.
And they have trouble actually buying homes. They have trouble having really good standard of living as well. So this is just for clarification. And Timothy, sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to give this background to the people watching.
So thank you, Manabe-san. You're always really on point with the questions that you ask, very piercing. So this question kind of underlies the pension reform that has just passed through the LDP process. It's not legislation now. The LDP has decided on Tuesday, with Konotaro saying, I guess I'll go along with it, but I don't like it because my base are small and medium companies, and you're going to increase the number of people that can participate in the pension system and Nenkin and the health benefits. And that means that my small and medium, the companies that vote for me, the shachos and the shareholders, now I haven't really brought home the bacon. They're going to spend more money to employ the people that they're already employing, and that's not going to help me. But it is an acknowledgement of the reality that Manabe-san's question just brought up. The other thing too is that for the opposition parties, they don't have to worry about how it's paid for. When they've been quizzed, they've said, look, if you just increase the amount of money that these people are getting, the economy will flourish and it will pay for that. Because you're trying to tax people and pay for these things, the economy is stagnating, so you have to spend more money to get more money. If you just give people a little bit more relief, they'll spend more money and the tax receipts will increase. That's their response to that. And they're saying that because, as Manabe-san quizzed, is this really fiscal or is it just to get votes? And I think it's just to get votes. They need to attract more people to vote for them. We stand for you. We are champions of you. You're not making enough money. You can't participate in the pension reform. You can't, buy a house. We're here for you. Komeito is like that. Definitely the Democratic Party for the People is like that. Ishin is more like that. Ishin's pet peeve, and the reason why they contributed to the budget passage this last spring was free lunches, free education for school children. So that was their issue. More people have children, so they're going to like Ishin because that's a big deal, not having to pay for your junior high school and high school education for your kids, and they get fed at school. That's a big deal. I like Ishin because I've got 3 kids and that sort of thing. So the LDP's response to that is, you guys are just being fiscally irresponsible. We are the party of measure, and we are the adults in the room. So although it's tempting because we've got an election coming up, we do want to win the election, but not at the risk of putting Japan in more dire straits than they are now. Japanese consumer consumption produces more than 50% of GDP. So when consumption goes down, GDP goes down. And so there's this controversy that's ongoing right now. It's been ongoing for a long time. How do you get consumption? How do you make people want to buy more? Do you give them tax breaks? Do you cut the consumption tax? What do you do as a government to enhance consumption? Because that's the key. The LDP has decided with Komeito, we're not going to do it. We're not going to reduce the consumption tax, but on a targeted approach, we'll deal with it. And then maybe in the fall, we'll come up with a supplementary budget. That's going to be way past the upper house election. So I think in the manifesto, they will explain that. They will talk about how they're being fiscally responsible. And the other parties, like Manabe-san suggests, they will talk in their manifesto about what they want the government to do and why they want them to do it. And if you vote for us, this is what we're going to insist on doing as soon as the election is over.
Well, okay, thanks for that. And let me just check out something else down here. And yes, before we move to LinkedIn or to YouTube again, so I want to go to Clubhouse.
Okay.
Here we Cam, thank you for watching. Here we've got, Cam says, I noticed Japan just passed the active cyber defense law on Friday,
yes,
which authorizes the government to monitor foreign interest traffic entering or transiting through the country.
Yes, right.
Yes. How does this provision align with Article 21 of Japan's constitution, which guarantees the secrecy of communications?
Okay. Yes. Once again, Cam, you are always spot on. So the legislation does consider that, and it says we're not looking at email traffic. We're looking at IP addresses. We're watching what's going on there. But as in most formal legislation, it does require the private sector to contribute and to voluntarily contribute information. So the legislation requires them, if you have a blip, if you think you're being tagged, if you think you're being hacked, or if you have been hacked, you must report, you must contribute voluntarily and enthusiastically to this legislation, or you're going to get fined. So it's very sensitive, because for the government to kind of overlay what's going on in commerce, especially in internet and commerce that's being conducted digitally, how can they? I mean, it's just a massive undertaking, and they do need. I mean, the Japanese government has already admitted it is crying for technical employees. So it's offering kind of a dividend for people who are in high school and in college to prepare for a digital career, to join the government and contribute to cybersecurity, to any one of these emerging technologies that the Japanese government needs. And it's being provided now. If you look at Rakuten, it's mostly foreigners that are working in Rakuten, a lot of Indians, a lot of Russians, a lot of people who have high technical capabilities. The Japanese just don't have the capacity to produce that. So this legislation brings a couple of issues forward, and the way to accommodate that is to really kind of tighten down on the requirements and maybe a little bit of impinging on the constitutional privacy requirements. So it will be interesting, but they're between a rock and a hard place, and I think this legislation is designed to address that, but it is skimming very close to privacy concerns by individuals and by companies to keep their data private and to integrate the data that's being produced in Japan, perhaps in the home country, in the United States, or in London, or maybe Paris, where they're crunching the numbers and they're producing the analytics for that. The cyber concerns are growing, and probably the rest of the population doesn't know what's actually going on. There's cyber attacks occurring on almost a daily basis. So that would be something that the legislation doesn't go into effect until 2027, so in 2 years.
Right. Okay, thanks for that. And we've got a bunch of questions about the third round of negotiation talks with the Trump administration. I'll start with the first one, which is on YouTube from RLW. And RLW says, I'm curious about the expected content of Japan-US trade talks, but more concerning the sectors of defense, weapons, and areas related to food security and where it is relevant. Yeah. So do you have any information what they're going to be talking about, Timothy?
The Prime Minister spoke just this last week about the preparations going forward, and what Mr. Akazawa is authorized to talk about. And it does look like corn and more corn import from the United States, more rice import, at the risk of kind of challenging the base of the LDP, which are farmers and the Agricultural Association. I think he has to give a little bit on rice, on corn. They've talked about corn and ethanol production. Japan consumes ethanol from only two sources. They consume ethanol from Brazil and ethanol from the United States. That's it. It was supposed to come exclusively from Brazil, but the United States came in and said, you have to buy some of our ethanol too. So not such a happy outcome for the Brazilians, but it is international trade, and Brazil's not a military ally of Japan, so the United States got what it wanted. So, excuse me. So the United States is pushing forward. Also, the Prime Minister said it is likely for us to have to increase production of automobiles in the United States and thereby import them back into Japan, because that will really tamp things down. It will satisfy the President of the United States. It will decrease our tariffs. Maybe it's what we should be doing. So they're exploring that. But it's a go slow approach, as I said earlier. A lot is left to be decided, but it's not going to happen like China or the UK. I think they're going to temper that and tee it up for a great Trump Ishiba meeting in July, after the 4th of July, and just prior to the upper house elections.
Right. Okay. And we continue with the topic. So moving to Clubhouse again, it's a little bit of a long question, and it is multi-layered as well. It's from Cam. So we start with Nissan cutting 20,000 jobs and shutter up to 7 factories globally and maybe domestically. How is the Japanese government, particularly the LDP, framing its support for the manufacturing sector ahead of the July elections? With the third round of US-Japan tariff negotiations underway, will Nissan's 450 billion yen cost burden from US tariffs be directly addressed in the talks, or ask for tariff relief specifically for automakers like Nissan?
Yeah, Nissan is a bit of a one-off, Cam. Nissan is ill and sick and laying in bed with monitors beeping, all on its own accord. I mean, the Trump tariffs could not have come at a worse time. Who knows what's going to happen with Nissan? But it's a part of the grander complexion. Right now, the United States is going to put a tariff of 25% on automobiles that are exported from Japan into the United States. That decision has been paused. The implementation of that decision has been paused for 90 days, and that date culminates around July, the first or second week of July. And what happens with that is kind of separate from what happens with Nissan. Many people would be delighted for Nissan to finally get a comeuppance. They have a new CEO, you know, a foreign CEO that just promoted him over the last maybe 4 weeks or so, Maya.
I think so, yeah, a month ago or so, yes.
So they are struggling. They're trying hard. I don't know if they'll be able to make it, and it has the tariffs are only a just a contributing factor there. They're laying off workers. It's a pretty big deal. If somebody can come in, a foreign automobile manufacturer come in and rescue them, you know, they already have you know, the French involved there. I don't know if it's going to go. I can't comment more on that. Maybe there's somebody in the audience that knows a little bit more about that, but a good question. Thank you for it.
Right. Okay, we continue. So, could perceived softness of failure in the tariff talks become an election issue for the LDP in July, especially in manufacturing heavy districts?
Say that again. What's the first part?
Could perceived softness or failure in the tariff talks become an election issue for the LDP in July?
Oh, definitely. It's already an election issue. Many people are saying, Ishiba, he stinks. He's not very dynamic. He's not really driving the bus on the tariffs. He's sending one of his good buddies, Mr. Akazawa. Nobody heard of him. Does he speak English? He's revitalization minister. It's his first cabinet portfolio. Why didn't you send somebody else, somebody who's been doing this for a while? You're not involved. You weren't involved in the budget negotiations either. You're fat. You're losing your hair. All of these things, okay? So anything you can pick up a rock and throw at the prime minister, it counts. And so the negotiations on tariffs are going to be tough no matter who it is. It is Donald Trump. It is America first. And there is going to be a realignment, not just U.S., Japan, but globally, as you can see from what the president was doing all this last week in the Middle East. So this is a trend that is going to carry a lot of weight, and it's got long legs on it. So it is an election issue. No matter what happens, the prime minister will be blamed. I don't know if he's going to be able to come out with a success and say, Japan, you know, we really kicked their butts. You've heard a little bit about that from some of the people who are reporting on China. China pushed him around. China got exactly what they wanted, and the United States, well, whatever. But I don't think that that's going to be the story. It kind of needs to be the story that is sung, particularly when they sign the deal and then there's the upper house election days away. So let's wait and see. But yes, it's going to be an election issue. They're all election issues. Anything that involves or concerns the cabinet or the prime minister is a rock that can be picked up and thrown.
Right. Okay. And one more question from Clubhouse before we move back to LinkedIn and YouTube. Okay. So Prime Minister Ishiba maintains a maximalist public stance, while Akazawa, Japan's chief negotiator, is privately signaling willingness to compromise to avoid a deadlock. Are we seeing a strategic rift?
No, I don't think so. I think they are speaking. It's a strategy. So you send one signal and you do another thing. I don't think that the negotiations, the tariff negotiations, will end in a deadlock, and I don't think they will end in a failure. I think it is a realignment. I think Japan will get some things. They always do, and they will have to give up some things because the U.S. administration has changed. The consumer base is being readdressed, and manufacturing and employment are key issues. And the technique that the President of the United States is pursuing encourages people to be a little bit more conciliatory to involving the United States in their trade negotiations and their manufacturing process and that sort of thing. So let's see. But it looks like on the upswing, the appreciation for what the President of the United States, the 47th President of the United States, is doing is gaining in appreciation. The economic indicators are not quite clear, but they look like they're moving in a positive direction. The inflation rate has slowed in the United States. It's the lowest than it's been in about 6 or 7 years, I believe. So there is progress that's being made that people in the United States can feel, consumers, voters can feel. So a lot will happen over the next 4 to 6 weeks. By the time that the 90-day period is over, Japan will have signed a deal. There'll be a lot of fanfare, and then we roll into the upper house elections.
Yeah, just if I can mention something once again, as you said, it's not a rift. It's basically how, well, very strategically they approach the thing. But I also think that basically Japan is never looking out or trying to crush the opponent, right? So there will be a win-win situation, and both sides will probably have to do or to have to compromise, basically. But it will be a win-win situation for the two sides. No doubt there. Okay,
Yeah.
and going back to YouTube now. RLW says, well, it may be an outdated question, but is it not concerning to economists or anyone that 30% of the country's economy is essentially dependent on one metropolitan area?
That's who asked the question?
RLW.
So I'd like to know who RLW is. So you can't address that issue without talking about scuba, right? So
Okay.
scuba is an hour away from Tokyo. There is a direct line from from Akihabara to Tsukuba. It takes what, 59 minutes to get there?
Yeah,
And
under an hour.
you've been there many times, right, Maya?
I have, yes.
Wide boulevards, buildings that occupy a plot of land that consists of a lot of park, a lot of trees, a lot of things. So Tsukuba was built to be that second capital just in case. But yes, there is concern about that. There also was concern, although the RLW doesn't quite ask it, about moving some of these ministries partially to other areas. They've tried that. Konotaro was influential in moving part of the cultural agency to Kyoto. So they have a second office in Kyoto, a major office in Kyoto. So if you're a bureaucrat that's working in the cultural agency, part of you work in Tokyo, part of you work there. Some of the other agencies are attempting to do the same thing. There's two things that are going on. One is trying to separate some of the satellite offices into other regions for economic revitalization for the rural areas. And the other thing that's going on is a concentration of digital awareness and the control of information in the Prime Minister's office through the digital agency. So both of those are decades-long processes, but Tsukuba it's been established, and the decision to do that was made 25 years ago, 30 years ago. So good question. Everybody's very concerned about that. Should something happen, a major disaster that hits in particular Tokyo, since everything is done here, the major banks, the universities, the major corporations are based here in Tokyo, what in the hell is going to happen? So there is some planning going on. And just, excuse me, to wrap that up, the Nankai Trough is probably the next seismic area to suffer from an earthquake. It won't be up in Fukushima like the last one was. They predict it will be in Nankai Trough further south, impacting Kyushu, to a lesser degree Osaka. But they've already made predictions about, should something like that happen at this level or this level or this level, how many people are going to die, what the impact is going to be. And they've also started distribution. This is strange. They've also started distribution of emergency equipment and products. If you live in a certain area, you can apply for and receive for free from the government, water supplies, blankets, helmets, and that sort of thing. So it's a little bit scary when you hear those kinds of projects are underway. It sounds like they're preparing for Mount Fuji to erupt or something like that. But, here in Japan, you just can't you can't discount any of that. So I don't mean to be a naysayer or a doomsayer, but there is always something that's going on here, which means I'm doubly glad that I've got this audience and this opportunity to talk to you about those kinds of things that impact all of us.
Right. Yes. Okay. Thanks for this. And I think that we have gone more or less through the questions.
I'm so sad.
Oh, I know that you cannot wait to take a dive in Hotta. Hotta, that's the Hotta port, I believe. Okay. All right. Anyway. All right. So there is one more comment here from RLW on Tokyo.
Okay.
We see in history, I'm thinking African continental history, how intellectual progress gets entirely wiped out by invasions due to insufficient diffusion outside of city centers. Yes, very much so.
That's a great observation. That's one of the reasons why during World War II, everything was concentrated in Tokyo, and then they had the fire bombings and then the war and the destruction that happened in Tokyo. A lot of the artifacts, the art, the libraries was all destroyed. Tokyo was just a wasteland. And yes, so it has happened in the past. You're right. And I think they've learned their lesson from that. But, you know, when everything is based in Tokyo and it's convenient and it's the infrastructure is here, it's just hard to divorce yourself from that.
Very much so indeed. Okay, thanks a lot for this, and to everybody who shared their thoughts, comments, and questions here. Thank you for this. Thank you for tuning in from all over the world, from Osaka as well. Hiroko-san, thank you very much for being with us this morning again. And everybody, so from the United States and other parts of the world, Gabor, it was a pleasure having you with us again. And we'll be here once again next Sunday at 8:20. I don't know where Timothy will be reporting from. Maybe
the weather is supposed to be much better than it is today. It's really blustery. I don't know how it was in Tokyo, but it rained all day yesterday. The wind is at about 25 knots today, so I can't even leave the harbor. I will stay here and prep the boat for departure next week. Next week, I hope, is nicer, and I hope to make an overnight to Misaki and then sail back and report to you from probably the port of Misaki next Sunday.
Right, from the port of Misaki. That's on the other side of the Tokyo Bay.
That's right. The Tokyo Bay, it's got Chiba on this side and then Yokohama on this side. And the tip of the peninsula is Misaki. And the tip of the peninsula here in Chiba is Tateyama. And I'm just a couple of kilometers away from Tateyama.
Timothy, I'm serious. When you're crossing the Tokyo Bay next week, don't sink any of the tankers. Okay. So, all right. And once again, well, thanks a lot, Diana. Thank you very much, Patricia. Thank you very much as well. And well, we've got others whose names I just cannot mention, all of you, but it's really.
Let me say one thing, Maya, before we close up. We've been doing this for more than 4 years. We don't charge. Nobody sends us love or cookies or anything like that. But you know, it's a dedication that both of us feel. If you would just hit like, if you would just give us some sense that you exist. I know you exist. I know we have an audience of several thousand, but we don't hear from you because a lot of people hide behind YouTube or they just want to stay anonymous. But give us a little bit of love. It really encourages us to know that we're making a mark and that we're hitting a need that you have. And by that encouragement, you can tell us, would you spend a little bit more time on this? Would you dive off the boat? Would you do something a little bit more expansive? And we'll pay attention. So it's great to hear from the audience.
It is. And if you think that these briefings will be helpful to your friends or colleagues, just spread the word. That's it. So it doesn't cost anything and it will be very, very helpful for us too. Thanks a lot. Okay. And once again, Timothy, stay safe.
Thank you, Maya.
And enjoy the day. Also, what else? Oh, well, this is another shout out for our sponsors.
Okay, here we go. You're getting better at this, Maya.